Well, Cosatu has lashed out at the Acting Public Service and Administration Minister, Thulas Nxesi, for insisting that he will implement what government has put on the table as far as that wage increase is concerned. Workers say they don't believe that what government is saying is true when it says the offer comes up to 7.5%. Their interpretation is that all they're getting is a 3% increase. Let's speak now to Minister Nxesi, who's joining us by phone this afternoon. A very good afternoon to you, Minister. Grateful for your time. So, labour unions are still determined to continue with a national day of action next week, as well as pickets. Can talks help prevent that?
Well, the unions have the right to labour. They have the right to strike and even the right to picket. But that has to be done within the agreed rules. And unions need also to remember that there are those who are in the essential services who cannot just withdraw labour, but they will have to have minimum service level agreements before they can be able to do that, those who are in the essential service. However, we must be able to say we have called for the unions to come back to the negotiations. And we're still calling them to come back to the negotiating table so that they can improve the working conditions. In this tumultuous, I've said that, tumultuous economic situation where we sit with 10 million people unemployed, 17 million on the ground, we're sitting with poverty and so on. And then we have to do a balancing act. And we have to work together and we must stand united to improve the situation. Therefore, let them come back to the negotiating table. Because it's fine, even if they go on strike. But ultimately, matters are resolved at the negotiating table. We have not closed negotiations. We are still allowing for the mediation.
But any deal that would be negotiated now, when would workers see the benefits of that increase? Because they say they want the increases now, higher increases, as soon as tomorrow. But as what you have said as government is that the budget has already been tabled, so there's almost no more wiggle room as things stand based on current calculations. Is there?
There's always opportunities. For this particular period, unfortunately, we have been accused of unilaterally imposing this wage agreement. But what we must be able to first indicate is that given the timing we're faced with the dilemma that we have to advise the Minister of Finance what the current offer was, and even in the absence of the agreement, that it could be budgeted for in the MTBS, because if it was not budgeted for in the MTBS, we're standing a risk of losing that budgeted fund with no guarantee that further funding would be made available. So the responsible stance which we took was to ring-fence that and allow for the negotiations. The Minister is still going to present a budget next year. But remember, we're talking about an MTBS, which means it has been very difficult for the Minister, even for the budget, to budget for the next round of what we're supposed to be entering into. And we are saying they must come back so that we can be able to negotiate and look into the future. Whatever agreement we can reach at this particular moment, the Ministry of Finance will be able to say when and how it can be implemented maybe in future. But I think they must come back. That would be a responsible stance.
But if the government cannot afford to pay more than what it's paying now, it's unlikely, is it not, that by February, in the February budget, you'd have found more money to pay so many workers better than what you've been able to offer now?
We look at the different options. And what we are arguing at the moment, because there's a disagreement about what the wage offer consists. And as government, we are saying the wage offer it's an average increase of 7.5, and we are arguing that it has two elements. A component of the 3%, which is pensionable, and another one which is 1,000 rand, which is not pensionable. And when you look into that, that 1,000 rand to other workers is about 13%, to others is 2% who are at the high end. But what we are saying, let's sit and look at the different options, even if we go on strike. But ultimately, we will have to resolve this matter on the table and looking at the different options, if there are any options.
But the problem that is also seemingly appearing, Minister, is that the relationship is seemingly eroding day by day, because even you yourself, as the minister who's taking care of public service and administration, have also been criticized by the unions who feel that you're basically saying to them, it's government's way or the highway.
Well, when it comes to the issues of the wages, I've never heard of any employer who's popular with the workers. And there will always be fights when it comes to the negotiable issues. But there are various dispute resolving mechanisms which can be able to help us. That's why we have such a very good dispute resolving mechanism in our legislation, which must be utilized. And ultimately, we will have to pull all stops and try and deal with those issues. But we must accept that we are operating within a very difficult economic situation. Remember, prior to COVID, we already have our economic recession. Came and we lost about 1 million jobs. Came COVID, we lost 2 million jobs. We had the violence in KZN and even in Gauteng. Workplaces were destroyed. So we must not take it lightly that whatever we do it within very constrained economic situations.
And that's exactly why I'm curious about how realistic it is to say to workers that a better plan can be worked out within the next 3 months, because by government's own estimate, I mean, even before the pandemic, government was saying it in fact needs to cut the public sector wage bill. So are you not setting yourselves up for further confrontation with workers by saying a plan can be worked out?
We are not. We are saying come back to the table, and we're not saying within the next 3 months. The minister is still talking about the budget. One of the realities we have to deal with is the tendency to negotiate after the fact in the public service. Once everything has been finalized in Parliament in terms of the money bill, and then you come and negotiate. We are already negotiating within a restricted budget. If we were driving the negotiations as we had planned, which are parallel to the budget, the negotiations would inform what should be budgeted for, not the vice versa. And then that's what we are calling for the future, because we must be futuristic.
Minister Thulas Nxesi, thank you so much for your time today.